Voss talks about the attributes here and says while there's no attempt at a fundamental classification of attributes like you find in your Reformed systematic theology or Reformed dogmatics textbooks, there's nonetheless a fundamental distinction that's made here. And it's wonderful because it reminds us of something fundamental to God's identity. And that is this, that God remains who he is as the self-contained God in his voluntary condescension as the creator and as the one who by a special act of providence enters into covenant with his people. You can think, for instance, Voss amplifies this, and I won't read everything, but on pages 177 and 178 especially of his Reformed Dogmatics, volume 1, Voss reminds us that while God's acts fall in time, that is, while the work of creation is a work that has its terminus in time, and while the act of voluntary condescension to enter into covenant, which is an act of special providence, technically concurrent, temporally concurrent with the work of creation, while that falls in time as well, Voss says we must remember this, and Isaiah 57:15 is accenting this, that there is no time distinction in God. And that when God relates to creation and what Voss calls a new relation, here's what you have to remember. The relation changes, mutable creatures are formed. Um, so the relation changes, creatures in the relation change, but for the God who creates, for the God who condescends in a special act of providence and covenant to give himself to Adam and his posterity as their blessedness and reward, there is no change in God. Voss uses the language from the classical tradition, no real change, designed to remind us of what? That God's activity is not to be collapsed into the activity of the creature in which relation entails change. For the creature, the relation entails change. That which was not is. Or if it's Adam concretely in relation to God, he is going to be created to change in the sense of moving from an estate of innocency through perfect personal, exact, and entire obedience under covenant to an estate of glory. So there's a fundamental change in the relation that Adam would sustain to God. He would move in his relation to God from being a creature in innocency, positive righteousness, holiness, and knowledge of God under probation, to the confirmation and advancement of that relation in glory. But while Adam would experience the lockstep movement, the before and after, God would not. God remains in the relationship who he is prior to and apart from the relationship, the self-complete, self-contained, fully actual triune God in whose giving of good gifts there is no shadow, variation, or change. And so the beauty of this is that God wills an authentic relation to the creature, but that authentic relation does not occasion some kind of change of God, so that, as Isaiah 57:15 says, God remains the one who is exalted above the creature. As you so helpfully read from Isaiah 55:8, my ways are infinitely higher than your ways, my being than your being, my knowledge than your knowledge. Yet, I relate to the one sovereignly and freely from myself. I relate to the one who is lowly and contrite, namely to the image bearing creature pre fall, to those redeemed by the grace of God in Christ post fall. And so Voss is helping us, I think, here recognize that while you don't have a technical classification of attributes, the fundamental creator creature distinction and relation is set on grand and programmatic display here in Isaiah 57:15.